Hey everyone, Sam Skaggs here, social media director for the Kentucky High School Hockey League Board. And we're going to sit down today with Coach Louis Abounader, the director for hockey operations for the Louisville Metro Ice Cardinals. We're focusing on the varsity and junior varsity teams, but we do get to have a little discussion about everything else going on in and around Louisville as it pertains to hockey. Also, we get to talk to him a little bit about Team Kentucky and get his approach and his perspective on all things hockey. So, hope you enjoy the interview, and if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us.
Can you share a little bit about the time when you first joined Louisville Metro Hockey to now, as far as your development in your role in the development of the program up to date?
Sure, yeah. So I came on board in 2021 that winter, and it certainly had some humble beginnings. We had one varsity team, kind of a depleted roster as far as numbers were concerned, and all the players that didn't play for either St. X or Trinity, if they were in any other high school, they would be participating with our Metro program. There wasn't much upward mobility beyond youth hockey after they were done playing high school. But I think it's come a long way in the 4 or 5 years. Right now we have two teams. We have a varsity team and a JV team. Both are competitive, both field full rosters where everyone has an abundance of ice time and has plenty of opportunities to grow on either team. And with that 4-year span of high school hockey, kids just want to play. So giving them those opportunities to get game reps, having their own practice sheets with their own teams, maybe having some kids double rostered on both teams gives them an opportunity to be in the best position for that particular player, regardless what their skill level is or what their age is at that point. So I think it's come a long way, and I think we're destined to have a pretty good season this year.
Awesome. What motivated you to take on the role of director of hockey?
After I graduated from U of L, I worked temporarily in Cleveland for about a year until my visa expired, unfortunately. So I had to go through the whole immigration process with USCIS. And from that point on, I had a 10-month to 17-month process where I was, reflecting on what I really enjoyed doing and what I really missed. And it was a game of hockey, and I was passionate about it. And being away from it that long made me want to come back and be involved and pay it forward in a different role other than being a player. And I wanted to get into coaching, and the opportunity arose for the director of hockey position. It was a brand new position that they implemented in 2020, 2021. And it was actually my head coach at the University of Louisville that asked me to come down and consider the position and apply for it. And here we are 5 years later, and it was a great decision. I don't regret it at all.
What are some of the milestones that the program has had under your time as director of hockey?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, the previous question you'd asked me as far as kids moving on beyond youth hockey in Louisville, they'd kind of finish youth hockey and then move on with their lives and maybe put hockey in the rearview mirror until maybe they have kids and their kids would want to play. But now we're starting to see a lot of players move on from youth hockey in Louisville and play at the junior level, play at the college level. There's some figures that have come out of Louisville, like China Taylor, who was in our co-ed program, and to see where she's come all this way. She's on the U18 women's national team as a 15-year-old, and she played co-ed hockey in Louisville up until she was 11, 12 years old. Berkeley Whitehead is another player from, I don't think she started in Louisville, but she played here for a couple seasons, and now she just recently committed to Yale University. Reese Brednich, she's playing at Middlebury. We have 3 or 4 players right now in prep school or playing pretty high-level juniors. So that's just the beginning of it. Seeing those players progress in those 5 years, and even the kids that were 8 years old when I came in, and now they're about 14, 13 years old. I think the future is bright, and it's only going to get better. Louisville's going to be on the map, I think, on a lot of rosters. People are going to see Louisville on those teams.
Awesome. What is your overall coaching philosophy when it comes to developing young athletes in the program?
I think it's just putting them in the best position to succeed, and it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time, of course, and as far as practice is concerned, just making sure that you're being efficient with your ice time and making sure there's no players that are sitting around, standing around, watching stuff go by. Everybody's active, everybody's participating, making sure the repetitions on each of those drills are lengthy so that it's worth it to take those reps. And I'm a big component. I really enjoy putting players in positions where it's not necessarily easy for them, where they have to struggle and be challenged. And I think when they finally overcome those challenges, it helps them develop a lot quicker than if they were to just stay in their comfort zone.
Speaking on those challenges and how it relates kind of to life, how do you balance skill development with teaching life lessons, but through the lens of hockey?
Sure. I think hockey's a great microcosm for society. I mean, especially in a game, right? Like nothing's ever black and white. There's always gray area, whether that's a coach's decisions, or a ref making a call that you don't like or you do like. There's always going to be moments where you're dealing with adversity, and if you're able to overcome those moments, I think it really tells a lot about yourself, and it's a gratifying feeling as a player. So, as a coach, you try and challenge players. You try to call them out if they're being hooligans or not representing your program or the logo on your jersey. You think with pride or in the proper way. When you're speaking, you have to make sure you command the attention of the players. Respect is something that's not necessarily given; it's earned. So as a coach, you have to make sure that you're not being a hypocrite and you practice what you preach. I think having some type of hockey background from your playing experience also adds a degree of credibility to what you're preaching. So I think that's something that's helped me as well. So it's not a perfect art. There's no perfect way to go about it, but I think as long as you treat the players with respect, I think it could go a long way.
What differences do you see in the needs of varsity players as compared to JV players?
I'd say it's typically more of an age thing. Sometimes the players aren't, physically or mentally as mature as the older kids. So it just depends the situation for each player. But you just want to make sure that everyone's playing, right? You want to be in a position where they're playing games, they're in practices, getting reps. You're not sharing the ice with 40 kids out there. So I think sometimes they're just not ready, and you don't want them to be not ready and not playing simultaneously. You want to make sure that even though they're not ready for that next step, they're still developing, they're still playing, they're still on the ice, and they're still being challenged. That when it's their turn and those older players graduate and they move on, they could kind of fill in seamlessly.
Talking about those next steps, how do you prepare athletes who may want to pursue hockey beyond high school, whether it be in juniors, college, or club hockey?
Yeah, so at a certain point, I'd say at around 14, 15 years old, the pace of the game gets a lot quicker. Your decisions have to be a lot faster. Everyone's, pretty close as far as skill level is concerned. Obviously, there's always those exceptions. There's some good players, that stick out at times, but it's not like an 8U or 10U where you could have one stud on the ice, dipsy doodle the whole team and then, rely just on that person to carry the whole offensive load. Or same thing from the defensive side of things, or if you're a goaltender that's standing on your head. So with everyone kind of being closer and neck, what can you do differently? For me, it's two things. It's obviously trying to get stronger. So if you could give yourself that little bit of an advantage as far as speed, strength, durability, that obviously speaks volumes of what you do in the off season or what you do off the ice. So in the gym or, obviously training. So, and then being a student of the game, making sure that you go back and watch film, asking coaches, hey, what could I have done differently on this play, being coachable. And that's what all the really good players do. That's what separates them from the rest of the herd is, doing that extra stuff that maybe isn't, as glamorous or as sexy as just going on the ice and playing hockey.
Talking about that extra stuff, how do you integrate off-ice training, being like strength conditioning, nutrition, mental preparation into your program?
So typically we have several coaches council meetings during the season where, we have open discussions with all the coaches. They could kind of field questions or ask me for advice or use me as a resource. And I try and steer them the best way I can, whether that's providing links from USA Hockey or just from past experiences in my career, having played at a reasonably high level. So it's again, you never want to micromanage the coaches and tell them, hey, you have to do it this way, because every team and every player is different. But just not being satisfied with the bare minimum, doing some research, seeing what is the age appropriate training, strength and skill training outside of the rink. Maybe consulting some parents who have some medical background or dietitian nutritionist background, where they could talk to them and see, hey, what can we implement, as far as a pregame meal or something we could eat the day before that'll help them, be the best versions of themselves on the ice. I'm not going to pretend and say that I'm a doctor and I know everything, but I could just give my advice based on my experiences.
Yeah. Switching kind of to a specific role, what role does goaltending development play in your system? And given how crucial it is at the high school level, discuss the importance of really that specialized position?
Sure, yeah. So that was one of the biggest problems that we had addressed early on when I came on board, was the need for some goalie-specific training and kind of some mentorship in that department. We've been very fortunate to have Colin Larson on hand. He was an old player for myself at U of L. Unfortunately, with some concussion problems, he had to stop playing relatively early, I think after his sophomore year. But thankfully, he stuck around in Louisville, and he's been very involved with our youth program, and he makes sure to communicate with all the coaches on when to get on the ice with which goalies. They'll separate 30, 40 minutes of their practice time for him to work with either one or the two goalies on those teams, and he works with all the teams. And I think it's been a blessing to have him. He's done a tremendous job. All the goalies that have worked with him have gotten a lot better. And he's also brought in his goalie company, his D-tending. They come in and do a camp every spring. I think we're going into our third season now with him in our program. And that Z-tending camp has been awesome, getting 30 goalies on the ice, working with the head of the program, including Colin and some other goalies in the state, to come in and teach the youth, and try and address that shortage and obviously the skill gap to make sure they're up to snuff with our teams.
Right. Switching to program specific, how would you describe the culture of Louisville Metro high school hockey?
I mean, we got some great leadership. Andy Atchison's our head coach. He does a great job, commanding the respect and the attention of all the players. He runs a tight ship. He makes sure that there's some training involved beyond the rink, whether that's working out. I think they're doing some CrossFit workouts right now, once a week. Their practices are rigorous. They work on systems. They make sure that they're getting their conditioning in. And, as far as I know, everything's been going great. It's been improving every year, as far as the win-loss records, as far as the skill level on the ice, and the commitment. I think the biggest problem was that there was a culture issue with players maybe being distracted by, work or girlfriends or whatever the case may be outside of hockey. And I think that we're starting to get more of a buy-in at the older age groups, which is where players have tended to fizzle off in the past. And right now I think we're getting a lot of buy-in from that next generation of 14, 15, 16-year-olds that are playing it through our program up until 18 when they're ready to move on.
Awesome. Now, Louisville is not necessarily, it's kind of a hodgepodge of people from different high schools as opposed to having a specific named high school squad,
Sure.
kind of like some other schools in the city. So what steps are taken to build team chemistry when you do have these kids from different high schools and different spots in the community?
Sure, yeah. So, they're all going to meet at some point at the rink several times a week. So it's not as far away as it would seem, even though they're in different schools. Like, some of these kids probably see their teammates more than they see their own families, right? They're here 3-4 times a week, all year, for the most part, right? Maybe not in the off season, but for a long period of time, for several seasons at a time, if they play all 4 years of high school. So I don't think it's as distant as it may be perceived to be, but I've always told coaches, hey, if you have any opportunities to do team bonding experiences outside of the rink, whether that's going go-karting or maybe doing a pool party before the season starts while the weather's still nice, maybe going to a park and playing football or something, or a rec center. But it's trying to get them involved in things beyond the rink. I've always been a preacher of that. It really, gets maybe their minds away from hockey, and maybe players that wouldn't have talked to each other on the ice because maybe they didn't know each other, or one's an upperclassman, one's a freshman. Getting them into situations where they have no choice but to talk and communicate with each other and hang out as teenagers should. I think those are the best situations to put them in.
How important is the parental and community aspect to the program, to the success of the program?
Yeah, and I go back to the same thing I said earlier as far as commitment is concerned, right? Like, obviously you want the players to be committed to, but it comes from the the higher levels up, which is the coaches, and then the parents. It's like, what's the commitment level from the parents? Do they want to see this program succeed? Do they want to see their kids succeed in the sport of hockey? And it requires a lot of dedication. Obviously, there's a lot of money that goes into it, a lot of time. On the weekends where parents probably want to stay home and hang out and just relax after a couple days of work. So getting that buy-in from the parents has been huge, and it's only helped us continue to grow.
What role does the Louisville hockey community, including the youth programs at a younger age, play when it comes into feeding into the JV, into the high school programs?
Sure, yeah. So it's at the younger age groups, we try to focus a lot on skill development, giving them the right tools to succeed, always high emphasis on skating. As of last year, I've mandated that each of the coaches reach out to me once a month for power skating with all the teams, so that they're getting that, consistent edge work, consistent conditioning, consistent, focus to detail on their skating. I mean, Connor McDavid is the best hockey player in the world, and he doesn't stop working on his skating. He could be satisfied and content, but he doesn't. So that gives us enough reason to tell these kids, hey, when you feel like it's good enough, it's still not good enough. Just focus on skating, focus on those skills, and just maximize those reps. The kids like those puck touches, and then hopefully when they're teenagers, then they could evolve the things we talked about earlier, doing film review, getting stronger outside the ring.
How do you promote inclusivity and ensure that new players feel welcome, maybe even if they don't really have as much hockey experience as some other kids?
Sure. In the last couple of years, we've done a good job of, I'd say, refining our preliminary programs. So in the past, we've had support from Lil Preds. Unfortunately, they had cut the funding from us, so we had to figure out a new way to get a lot of kids into the door for a relatively cheap price. And I think that's probably the most off-putting thing for parents is the price of hockey. But we implemented Little Ice Cards, which is a brand new inaugural program we started this summer. You get a full set of gear in 7 sessions with myself and other qualified credentialed coaches. You get 7 sessions with us every Sunday, once a week for 7 weeks, and it's been awesome. A lot of parents have really been happy with the price and happy with the outcome. We run an ADM, which is USA Hockey's recommended coaching style for the younger age groups, which is station-based. So, even though we have 60 kids on the ice, if we have 6 stations, they're still getting their reps in every 7-8 minutes. We blow the whistle, they rotate, and they could work on skating in one section, and stick handling on another, and then passing, and maybe a game at the end. So it's been really fun, and it gets a lot of kids into hockey. We had a great turnout this summer, and we're just hoping to keep improving on that, get them into our travel teams as well.
So with the Little Preds kind of following through, what would you say maybe would be the 2 or 3 challenges, or biggest challenges facing high school hockey in the Louisville Metro area?
And I don't really want to bash the high school skill level right now, but I don't think it's at the level of other high school, I'd say state high school associations. Maybe you go to like a Michigan or New York or Massachusetts, and you see the high school hockey there, and it's unbelievable. It's really good. It's going to take some time to get to that level, but I think maybe keeping all the high school teams playing each other is good for the rivalries and keeping that intact. But if each team, I think, could leave their comfort zone and maybe not be the big fish in a small pond, go out and play teams from Chicago or go out and play teams from Pittsburgh, in addition to their regular conference schedule or league schedule, I think that would be great for them, just to go and see those other places and see that other skill level outside of Kentucky.
The prime commodity really amongst the rinks in Kentucky is ice time.
Yep.
And so how do you manage scheduling practices in games to meet the needs of, of both the JV and high school teams?
Yeah, so you're never going to please everyone. You know, someone's always going to be ticked off as far as maybe what they get for the amount of ice time, or maybe they have to share ice time with another team. That's definitely something that we're dealing with at Iceland. Thankfully, we have 2 sheets. You know, I think that puts us in a better position than some other places that maybe deal with just 1 ice sheet for a whole association. So it's never going to be perfect, but at the beginning of the year, we just take a look at the numbers, see what our anticipated teams are going to be. You know, whether that's travel, house league, our mites program, an abundance of other programs. You know, we sit down and have a meeting in the off season after tryouts when we anticipate those numbers, and then we kind of just play Tetris with the schedule, what the weekly schedule would look like, right? So Brian Riblet, he's come on board as of last year. He's our operations manager. You know, he has a close relationship with the rink management here, and he gets the information from rink management to see what the other tenants are doing as far as scheduling. So whether that's figure skating or men's league, he sees what's available when those are all included, and then we kind of just mix and match and see, you know, what's the most appropriate time for 8-year-olds to be on the ice, what is the appropriate amount of time for, you know, high schools to have during the week, and we just go from there and, you know, try and make the best decisions we can with what we have.
Kentucky is a traditionally basketball, football, baseball kind of state. You do have some other sports like lacrosse and golf and stuff, but how do you think hockey competes with those other sports?
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely playing catch up with those other sports. I think they're a lot more popular, and you know, it's no secret hockey's not a traditional sport here in Kentucky, but I think it's been growing in the state. As far as a sales pitch for players who want to, you know, consider hockey, you know, I might be biased. I'm from Canada, but I love hockey. It's given me so many opportunities in my life. It's dragged me back into a rink. Even when I thought I was done playing, I'm back and I'm coaching and I'm in my current role. So, you know, just you add an extra 10 miles per hour to whatever you're doing. You know, there's a degree of difficulty where you need to have the coordination to hold a hockey stick and control an object that's not directly in your hands or in your feet. All the while you're balancing on, you know, 1/10 of an inch of a steel blade on slippery ice. You're decked out in gear from head to toe to protect you, and, you know, you feel kind of fearless out there. There's the physicality aspect to it. There's the camaraderie from playing with your team, your teammates, and playing for a coach that believes in you. And it's, you know, there's nothing like it's very rewarding, and that's why you see the reactions and the emotions of players pouring out of themselves when they win the Stanley Cup or they lift the trophy, because they realize all the hard work that goes into it. And I think if you could kind of encapsulate that to a player that's considering playing hockey, just watch those smiles when they lift up the cup. I think it gives you goosebumps. You know, I'm not necessarily saying that everyone in our hockey program is going to lift the Stanley Cup one day, but our version of that, whether that's winning our league in the high school tournament or, you know, just winning an independent tournament, whether that's the TCS or Big Bear or something, it's really the ultimate team sport. And, you know, one player's not going to win you a game, he's not going to lose you a game. It's a full team effort. So that's my favorite part of it.
That's awesome. Latching onto that perspective that you kind of just talked about, how would you measure success beyond just the wins and losses?
Sure, yeah, I think it's being a good person. Obviously, you want to go as far as you can with what hockey could do for you, and, you know, everybody wants to play professionally someday, but, you know, we know that's so small of a percentage of players. So it's just maximizing your youth, maximizing the amount of time you could play hockey. I mean, I make fun of myself all the time with my U of L players, and I'm like, you know, I milked every drop of eligibility I had. I played 5 years of college hockey. It was technically my 6th year because I took a year off when I was in Massachusetts. So, you know, enjoy it as long as you can, because when it's all said and done, the weight's going to come piling on because you're not on the ice all the time. So you'll be 30 pounds heavier, you know, a month later if you're eating the same way and not skating. You know, you're going to miss your teammates. You're going to miss those long road trips where maybe you're stuck in a bus for 7 hours, but you made all those memories stopping at the gas station picking on each other and chirping each other in the locker rooms. And, those are the things that you really carry with you. Maybe going to youth tournaments and walking in with your wheelie bag, or, maybe getting a slushie after the game because you scored a goal and your dad was proud of you or something. It's all these little memories that you keep with you forever. And I think that's something that you could equate with success that goes beyond maybe scoring goals or winning championships.
Cool. So switching kind of to the aspect of the future of the high school and the JV teams, where do you see Louisville Metro hockey in about 5 years, or even 10 years?
Sure.
Get out the goals that you'd like to see.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if we've won the state championship before, so I'd like to see us, reach that pinnacle and see the fruits of our labor come to fruition. And I think we could get there. We definitely have the talent in the works and coming up with the younger age groups. Our 14U team is going to be pretty solid this year. Our 12U team looks really good. So as long as we could retain our players, which has been one of our, I'd say, downfalls, is building these players up, developing them, and then they'll leave to go play AAA somewhere else. And then, that obviously dilutes the skill level on our team. So if we could retain our players, have them come up together, grow together, learn to play with each other and build that chemistry, and then see it all the way through up until 18 years old or their senior year of high school. I think we could be pretty steady as far as the top of the standings with all the other teams in our high school league.
What advice would you give to a middle schooler who's considering joining the Louisville Metro hockey team?
Yeah, I mean, it's never too late to play hockey. I've talked to 40, 50, 60-year-olds that are starting hockey for the first time, whether that's in our adult leagues or, picking up private lessons with me. So don't be scared, don't be cautious. It's an inclusive environment. You'll be amongst friends, you'll be amongst players that are the same age and skill level as you. We have our 14-year-olds that are moving on to the high school, and maybe they're not prepared for the high school team, so they'll play JV. Which is a position we didn't have a couple years ago. We didn't have a JV team. First time we had it was last year, and it's been growing ever since. So, you'll be in the right spot. You'll be with house league players that have also graduated from the older age group. I think they graduated 14. So, don't be scared. Try it out, and I'm sure you'll be a fan of hockey for life if you do.
Last question about the Louisville Metro program. If you could send one message to the city of Louisville about supporting high school hockey, what would it be?
Build a rink. That's all I got. That's the only thing holding us down right now. Not just high school. It's everything. It kind of gives us a firm ceiling, and we want to break through a glass ceiling. And if we could get a rink built sometime soon, I think the possibilities are endless.
Awesome. Question about Team Kentucky, because this is really the inception come from you. You're the founder, the matriarch, if you will, or patriarch.
Yeah.
Sorry. So how did that from inception, how did that come to you, and how did you recognize the need for such a team as the cumulative of all programs at Team Kentucky?
Sure. So one of the problems we had first identified when I came on board was maybe the lack of opportunities for hockey beyond the regular season. So in addition to, I run multiple camps a year and clinics, but I really wanted to get involved with the head coaching aspect of things and, have a direct impact on the players on the ice and on the bench during games, which in my role I don't necessarily have the luxury of doing. So I kind of, talked this idea around with head coach Brian Graham, who suggested I look into it. I talked with parents to see maybe what they would prefer to do when the regular season was done. And a lot of people were like, hey man, we love tournaments. Tournaments are exciting. It's one weekend. They play an abundance of games. You can make a trip out of it with your family. So if you go somewhere cool like Nashville, it's not just hockey. You could go and, eat some good food and go to Broadway and check out the Preds facility and do a variety of fun things that you would typically do in Nashville. So I thought it was just an ideal fit for demographic of hockey players down here, and I might have been a little ambitious and overzealous with running 4 teams by myself, but I've had great help from parents who have been assistant coaches and filled in for me in the past, or even other parents that have stepped up and been managers to help coordinate, team meals and make sure with the right ranks and make sure the rosters are submitted. So, it may seem like I'm the patriarch and I'm the one running the show, and sometimes it does feel that way, but it's always been a great support staff, and it wouldn't have been possible without all the help. I'm going into year 4 now for Team Kentucky, and the fact that, it's lasted this long is awesome, and we want to continue to grow it. And, we wanted to welcome players from other associations instead of, them being perceived as rivals or adversaries maybe on the ice during the season they are. But, the whole goal of it was to create some type of state all-star team where you can go to these tournaments and maybe, lift some eyebrows from parents that are watching, or even scouts. I've had scouts reach out to me and ask about players for our 18U team. So, it gives those kids an opportunity to get some exposure. And like I mentioned with, the question you asked me about what can we do to grow the high school team? And I said, leave the state and go play some other teams. That's part of the goal of it is let's go to Pittsburgh and play these good teams. Let's go to Chicago and, maybe we get our butts kicked once or twice, but, when we come back the next year, we'll know what to expect and we'll be better because of it. So it's just putting the players in the best position to succeed, whether that's dealing with stiffer competition, but also maximizing how fun it could be in the off season to play hockey and show up in shorts and flip-flops and, go to these tournaments and play, floor hockey in the hotels with the younger age groups. It's just creating those memories because, I'm 31 years old and those are my favorite memories from when I was a kid, was going to those summer tournaments. And I just want to pay it forward and give them those opportunities too, if parents are willing to do it.
With Team Kentucky kind of being the first of its kind, at least within the state, how have you seen the maturity of the players who has played the years under Team Kentucky from its inception to maybe where they're at now as far as maturity and skill and just overall love of the game?
Yeah, and it's it's a summer program, so I'm not going to be yelling like crazy and benching kids. I want everyone to play as equal as ice time as I can. Once we get to 14U, I'm a little more selective with end of the game if it's close or if it's a power play or penalty kill situation. But for the most part, I like rolling the lines. I want everyone to play as much as they can, and at the end of the day, it's a developmental program. We're trying to win the tournaments, but I want the guy that's at the bottom of our depth chart to progress as much as the guy that's at the top and getting those licks on power play or at the end of the game. So if I have room on my roster, I'll never turn players away. So whether you're a house league kid or a stud on the travel team, you'll be considered at tryouts. But at the end of the day, I want it to grow into something that's an exclusive opportunity where 50 kids try out for the 12U team, and unfortunately I have to cut players, but that's the only way to grow the program. We're not at that level yet, but that's kind of what I envision for what it can be. And I think that exclusivity can bring a little more fight from players to earn the privilege to be on that team. So it's you might hurt some feelings along the way, but that's the only way you can grow the program.
So with the kids that's on Team Kentucky, when they go back to their home programs and then see each other on the ice as rivals, how have you seen the game grow from that aspect?
Sure. Well, there's a familiarity there as far as maybe those players playing with each other on the same line. With Team Kentucky, when they're on the ice, maybe they have an advantage on the players' tendencies and gather some intel over the summer, so to speak. So I think maybe that could play a part in the games, but it's just cool to know that you have an idea of who the player is on the other side, other than, hey, I don't like that guy. He's the guy that slashes me all the time, or it's the guy that I played with this summer in Team Kentucky. And if they can make friendships and keep the bad blood on the ice, I think that's totally fine.
Okay, and we'll close with this. Give us your biggest recruiting pitch to come on to Team Kentucky or come to the tryouts, throw their hat in the ring.
Yeah, we're trying to assemble the best team possible. I want, like I mentioned earlier, I want like 50 kids to show up for each age group. That's what my goal and my envision is to make it a must-do opportunity for all hockey players in the state. I'm going to coach you guys like I would with my U of L players. Like I said, I probably wouldn't bench anybody unless it's something egregious, but I want everybody to play. I want to roll the lines. I want to coach you guys hard. I want to make sure that you're absorbing as much knowledge as I can give you, whether that's in practice or on the bench during the games. Hopefully when you come out of it, which I think has been the case the last 3 years, you become a better hockey player and you can bring everything that you've learned to your teams when you show up in the fall. And my goal for each player when they show up to their teams in September is to have the coaches, to have your teammates be like, what the heck did you do over the summer? Because you're not the same player that you were a year ago. And that's the goal. You get 4 high-tempo practices and 4, very challenging tournaments based on what the team looks like going into those weekends. And, it's a lot of work for me, but I think it pays off when you see the smiles on those kids' faces and see how far they've come, once the summer is all said and done.
Awesome. Well, Coach Abounader, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and we'll be in touch, and we'll be looking at your programs through the summer and also on the ice this fall.